Senator Blood.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to George W. Norris Legislative Chamber for the 46th day of the 106th Legislature First Session. Our chaplain for today is Pastor Jim Hack of the beautiful Savior Lutheran Church in Lewiston, Nebraska, Center Arches District. Please rise.
We pray. Almighty God, Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, we humbly come before you this day as we prepare to conduct the business of this state. We acknowledge our complete dependence on you for our very lives and livelihoods, and beg of your mercy to help our storm-ravaged communities. We give you thanks and praise for all who reach out to help those in need. And we this day especially pray for comfort for those who mourn the death of Kitty Carnes. As we meet here today, give us wisdom to carry out our duties in service to the people we represent, always mindful of the stewardship we exercise by your sovereign will. Through Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you, O Father, and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I call to order the 46th day of the 106th Legislature First Session. Senators, please record your presence. Roll call.
When you see him.
Mr. Clerk, please record.
I have a quorum present, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Are there any corrections for the journal?
I have no corrections.
Thank you, sir. Are there any messages, reports, or announcements?
Mr. President, your Committee on Agriculture reports 227 to general file with amendments. The registered lobbyist report is required by rule, and agency reports acknowledgement that are on file on the legislative website. That's all that I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Members, we're going to move into final reading, and I'll need you to be at your desks, please, for final reading. Members, please proceed to your desk for final reading. Speaker Scheer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. First this morning, as was noted earlier in the prayer, we have sad news in relationship to the passing of Kitty. She was a remarkable woman. She took literally 1,000 good young college kids and turned them into better people, better adults. Her impact will be felt for years. I wanted to give all of you a little information on just exactly how much of Kitty's life was spent in the legislature. Kitty began as a page in December of 1968. In 1972, she was designated as the page in charge. In 1977, she was designated as the page supervisor. She worked for the legislature for over 50 years. She supervised approximately 1,250 young adults in those 50 years. She was a supervisor, a mentor, and a friend to most of them. She was involved in their lives and was proud of their life accomplishments and left certainly a legacy in their minds, and those pages that were under her tutelage are a legacy to her. She thought of all of her people and her pages, and she lived vicariously through their lives and through our achievements. She will be missed by all. I would just ask that we will take a moment, and if you could please either remember Kitty in prayer or in thought and respect. Thank you very much. As I had done last year, and so I will refresh memories, and for those that are here this year for the first time, on Fridays or the last day of the weeks, I will give you an idea of which of the priority bills we will be looking at in the upcoming week. I sort of done that hit or miss more with larger bills that I think are of interest while we're still in hearings, but now that we are with priority bills, I do schedule those, and they're not necessarily in any specific order, so I like to give everybody a heads up of what we are going to be looking at in the next week to 10 days. We will be passing these list out, but I want to refresh those that were here earlier and those that are new. They are not necessarily listed in any specific order as far as when they will be heard. It is just giving you an idea of the bills that will be coming up. So for those that are listening, I know I will try to give the numbers somewhat slowly, as those that are listening on TV sometimes try to write the numbers down so that they as well can look them up and know what is coming up. So for those that are listening and for my colleagues, the bills that are in the initial list that will be a continuation of the agenda as we have it now are LR 14CA, Senator Wayne's bill, and LB 600, Senator Wall's bill. 472, Senator Dorn. 268, Senator Friesen. 352, Senator Moorfield. 483, Senator Erdman. 218, Senator Lindstrom. 59, Senator Kavanaugh. 514, Moorfield. 87, Wayne. 212, Government. 15, Blood. And 637, Stinner. The other item I would like to let people know, we will have I won't call it a final briefing, but there will be a briefing again today at noon in 1525 in relationship to the flood damage and where we are at with that. I would encourage you all to go. We will have another one, but it will be after the federal government does declare the federal disaster. And I would suggest that you all might want to attend that one as well, because that will be presenting information that will have to do with individual claims and how the individuals rather than governmental entities can respond to the damage that has been done. But again, the briefing today will be at noon. I don't suspect that it'll last a long time. There will be some new information, so it probably will be somewhat short. You'll be able to attend what other events that you have, but I think it will be of information for all of us, so that as you have a long weekend, I suspect people will be asking you questions in relationship to the flood damages and the state and the federal response, and you'll get a good idea of how you will be able to respond to that. So the briefing again is 1525 at noon, and then I will schedule another one with General Bohawk and Director Tuma once we do get the federal designation for the disaster. As always, I'm available back here if you have any questions. Have a great weekend. Recoup. Try to get your thoughts back on the right basis. And we'll see each other again then on Monday. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senator McCollister would like to recognize Dr. Stephen Williams of Omaha, who is serving today as Family Physician of the Day. Dr. Williams is with us under the north balcony. Doctor, please rise. I'd like to welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. We'll now begin final reading. Members, please be at your desk for final reading. Senator Hunt, for what purpose do you rise? Thank you. Legislative Bill 141. Mr. Clerk.
Bill 141 by Senators DeBoer, Blood, Bowles, Crawford, Dorn, Howard, Dorn, President McCollister, Moorfield, Pence, Brooks, Quick, Burgess, Worcester, Bill for Napoleon, for Numbers, Detroit, Savannah, for assault by strangulation, suffocation of a pregnant woman. Except as one of the church and his person opposed the next higher penalty classification, assault first degree, section 23, OA, assault by possession, 83, 10, 1, section assault first degree, section 23, 19, section assault, second assault, 23, 20, section assault, child first degree, 23, 1901. Section abuse, protecting in the first and second degree, domestic assault, second degree, section 28, 3, 23, assault and officer, emergency provider, state correctional officer, first degree, section 28, 3, 29. Assault by a confined person, section 29, days, confined person, misbehaves on persons, approximately causes serious bodily harm, operating motor vehicle, is a convincing felony, criminal life, section 1 says schedule a misdemeanor. Section 2, a person commits the offense of strangulation or suffocated person knowingly intentionally Normal chairperson impeaches normal breathing into the defense committee the second regardless of whether visible has occurred. Violation is a class 2A felony if the problem is not attempt to use dangerous offense or is from defense act and medical procedure. Section 3, Original Section 28, 115 and 28, 31001, reissued by statute of Nebraska are repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 141 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
Voting aye. Senators Albright, Arch, Blood, Bowles, Bosselman, Brandt, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Geis, Grieger, Groney, Halloran, Hanson, Hildreth, Hickam, and Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Colterman, LaGrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Moorfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shear, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Wayne, Williams, Wishart. Voting nay, none. Not voting, sirs, Brewer and Walls. 47 ayes, no nays, 2 excused, not voting, Mr. President.
LB 141 passes. Our next bill is LB 318. Mr.
Bill
Clerk.
318 by Senator McCollum, bill for negative liens, amendment section 5903. From an affidavit filing liens, prescribing section 52, the person of such was furnished desired solid persons, tribes of purchase or agents of agricultural in the second 9 uniform commercial quality. Section 2, original section 52903, revised act cum sub 2018 is repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 318 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arch, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clemens, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Urban, Friesen, Geis, Grieger, Groney, Holler, Hanson, Hildreth, Hickam, and Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Colterman, LaGrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Moorfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shear, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Wayne, Williams, Wishart. Voting nay, none. Not voting, Senators Brewer and Walls. 47 ayes, no nays, 2 excused, not voting, Mr. President.
LB 318 passes. Our next bill is LB 339.
Proposal Bill 330 by Senator Lathrop, bill for not judges, amendment section 28, to change the judicial nominating commissions. Except provide Secretary says the term of judges, Supreme Court citizens, members of that says the governor shall appoint 2 collect total members of the Supreme Political Party. Member commission shall be a period of 4 years, except the judges shall vary. All of the officers and internally member commission shall be for a period of 4 years. That election of the shall be selected to fill vacancies in the election of appointment. Members of the judicial nominating offices, judges, district court shall also serve members of the judicial except as members of the judicial nominating committee, district judges, and county judges, district 1, 2, 3, 4, and 10. Section 2, original section 24803, reissued by statute of Nebraska is repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 339 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arch, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Geis, Grieger, Groney, Holler, Hanson, Hildreth, Hickam, and Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Colterman, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Moorfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shear, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Williams, and Wishart. Voting nay, none. Not voting, Sirs LaGrone, Wayne, Brewer, and Walls. Senator Wayne voting yes. 46 ayes, no nays, 1 present not voting, 2 excused not voting, Mr. President.
LB 339 passes. Our next bill is LB 340.
It goes to Bill 340, by Senator Lathrop, Bill of Negligent Corrections, Amendment Section 22262, 83142, 144, 145, 146. Changes, eliminates further incarceration work camps, eliminates incarceration work commission and probation. When a court or sentence of an offender shall be studied such reasons as necessary, likely to secure the offender shall be abiding by law, the state standards of establishes destruction of residence person of probation. If the basis determined the presence of drugs or alcohol, if this act was in finance by such service to perform community service required section 20 and 2277. Be monitored by the electronic surveillance devices and pay the cost of such device presumed can be correctional facility when jail time is imposed a condition of probation and the court shall avoid the record time to finish service according to which time. The Department of Correctional Services shall develop a new incarceration work camp for placement of felony offenders of criminal charges, Section 83176. It is intended legislative incarceration work camp service to reduce prison crimes. The further intended legislature incarceration work serves the interests of adjustment and needs of certain currently defined offenders. It is the intended legislative board of parole may recommend placement of felony as the work is guard camp release from parole. Director of Correctional Services may assign a felony offender to the incarceration work camp if she believes the best interest of the felony offender of society except offenders. Section 5 is that your officer plays incarceration pursuant to Section of completes the incarceration shall be given to actually serve in the incarceration work camp. All costs incurred during the period of offenders committed in the incarceration event of the transportation work camp satisfactory performance in the incarceration work camp. Section 7, original Section 29, 22, 60 through 83, 142, 44, 45, and 46 reissue revised statutes, and Section 83, 143 revised stat cum sub 2018 are repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure having been complied with, the question is, shall LB 340 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care too? Record, please.
Voting aye. Senators Albright, Archibald, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Breesky, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Geis, Greger, Groney, Holler, Hanson, Hildress, Hickman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kalowski, Coulterman, Legrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Morfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shearer, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Williams, and Wishart. Voting nay, none. Not voting, sirs, Wayne, Brewer, and Walls. 46 ayes, no nays, one present not voting, two excused, not voting, Mr. President.
LB 340 passes. Our next bill is LB 354. Mr. Clerk, the first vote is dispense with the at-large reading. Those in favor of dispensing with the reading vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
38 ayes, 6 nays to dispense with the at-large reading.
The at-large reading is dispensed with. Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Engrossed Legislative Bill 354, introduced by Senators Pansy, Brooks, and Matt Hanson. It's a bill for enacting the Nebraska Juvenile Code. It amends Section 43, 26004, 2108, 0802, 03, 04, and 05. It changes requirements for juvenile pretrial diversion programs. It changes provisions relating to the sealing of juvenile records. It provides for retroactivity, increases the penalty, it harmonizes provisions, and repeals the original sections.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 354 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
Voting aye. Senators Albright, Archibald, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Breesky, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Geis, Greger, Groney, Holler, and Hanson, Hildress, Hickman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kalowski, Coulterman, Legrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, McAllister, McDonald, Morfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shearer, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting nay, none. Not voting, sirs, Lowe, Brewer, and Walls. 46 ayes, no nays, one present not voting, two excused not voting, Mr. President.
LB 354 passes. Proceeding to LB 354A.
First Bill 354 by Senator Pansy Brooks, bill for not getting appropriate Wednesday, carry 1-354 2019. Super appropriate 75,000 Supreme Court Robbery Cash Fund FY 2019-20 and Supreme Court Cash Omega 20 Supreme Court Program 570 carry on for 354. No expenditures, permanent temporal salaries, per diem funds, state employees shall be paying funds appropriated in this section.
All provisions of law relative to procedure having been complied with, the question is, shall LB 354A pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, there's Albright, Blood, Bowles, Boston, Brandt, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Geis, Grieger, Groney, Holler, and Hanson, Hilders, Hickman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Coulterman, LaGrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, McAllister, McDonald, Morfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting nay, none. Not voting, sirs, Arch, Lowe, Shear, Brewer, and Walls. 44 ayes, no nays, 3 present not voting, 2 excused not voting, Mr. President.
LB 354A passes. Next bill is LB 399.
Bill 399 by Senator Slama, Albright, Archer, Boston, Brandt, Brewer, President, Linehan, McDonald, Moser, Perman. Bill for Equity in Schools, Administrator 79, 720, 727, Committee, Americanism, and Grading, Section 1. It's responsibility society, review, given the opportunity to become a common responsibility during civil service, ensure strong, stable, and just process of America, such as unnecessary requirements, such as democratic way of life, cancer, opportunities, efforts, these events for gain, such as including non-responsible to the state, except as principal, doctor, full employment, realized one of the first 2 education, kindergarten, in. The school board shall be the calendar year appointed committee and only 2 public meetings listed in. Examine words and stones to use the district sign of social studies pursuant to 797601. Ensuring that curriculum committee on American Civics made actually written tests as a term of the entire legislature prior to the completion of the work again. Attendance administration because of great completion projects, such demonstration stretch as personal learning, take care of all steps necessary in carrying all social things, including this variety of section include adequate stress contributions, all regular development, growth of America and the great nation. There is no background of singer Perry's development phase of American flags, symbols, street sacrifices. At least 2 considerators shall be devoted to teach and civics days during which episode shall begin the following matters. Declaration of Independence of the United States, the Constitution of the United States, independence of government, the dangers of physical form of government, restricting individual freedoms, duties to serve, government participation, of knowledge, civics, appropriate patriotic exercise of the occasion shall be held in the directions, George Washington's birthday, Abraham Lincoln's birthday, Martin Luther King's birthday, married. Section 2, originally the State Board of Education, adopt primary rules and regulations necessary to New York 76 and state rules and set by such school district. Section 3, original section 79, 724, 727, reissue vice stats, Nebraska are repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure having been complied with, the question is, shall LB 399 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Albright, Arch, Blood, Bowles, Boston, Brandt, Breesy, Kavanaugh, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Geis, Grieger, Groney, Holler, and Hanson, Hilders, Hickman, Hughes, Kolowski, Coulterman, LaGrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Morfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shear, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Wayne, Williams, Wishart. Voting no, Senators Chambers and Hunt. Not voting, Senators Howard, Brewer, and Walls. 44 ayes, 2 nays, 1 present not voting, 2 excused not voting, Mr. President.
LB 399 passes. Next bill is LB 443.
Bill 493 by Senator McAllister, Bill of the Trans Treatment Corrections Act, amendment Section 83181 this time. Section 81 as well as each treasurer has regular mental health here. Each goes to adequate food and clothing clothes with the Corrections Department. Department shall follow each per committee, the federal committee as his attorney general the health authority. The council committee shall provide without charge the committee offenders by mind of the Department of Correction. Section 2 of Register Section 83181 reissue by stats Nebraska is repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure having been complied with, the question is, shall LB 443 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye. Voting aye, Senators Blood, Bowles, Brandt, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Friesen, Gregor, Hansen, Matt Hansen, Hilkeman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Colterman, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, McAllister, McDonald, Morfeld, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shear, Stinner, Vargas, Wayne, Williams, Wishart. Voting nay, Senators Albright, Bostelman, Clements, Urban, Geis, Groney, Holler, and Hilgers. Low. Not voting, Senators Arch, Breesy, Ben Hansen, LaGrone, Moser, Slama, Brewer, and Walls. 32 ayes, 9 nays, 6 present not voting, 2 excused and not voting, Mr. President.
LB 443 passes. Our next bill is LB 463.
Bill 463 by Senators Williams, Brandt, Breezy, Chambers, Clements, Dorn, Friesen, Groney, Colterman, Stinner, McAllister. Bill for not declaring revenue taxation. It raises the process of issue tax deeds and sales checks and harmonized provisions. County treasurer shall less than 4 or more 6 days of county so such county treasurer pub is their office tax interest cost thereon. No purchase any sale tax shall be signed tax to signing unless no states have tax 43 unless county such notice following issue of taxes subject to desired redemption on 77, 18, 24, 18, 30. Right redemption requires payment of the county treasurer for use such purchase his or signs amount of tax represent tax for the sale 3 years levied. Every personal residence described in section 25-505 1 of a person gas possession companies certified mail services shall be described in section 75-50101. Personal residence shall serve by the county sheriff at the county service made by person authorized by 25-507. Service on notice provided 77-1830 shall be posted by affidavit used regular care such service 7 delivery services used or service shall receipt shall be filed with this application of tax pursuant to 7-1830 such service. The person encumbered is entitled notice shall be posted to come newspaper general circulation. Notice prior 77-17-18 titled copy of the notice shall be the affidavit notice filed with the 5 name published manager below your newspaper and only telling makes a false statement regarding such matter shall be complied copy of the notice. For any notice provided by public affairs 77-1834, the affidavit published manager is below your newspaper copy of the notice. Affidavit purchase assigned the property of the province judges section 78-18-1863. Except for those provided in 72 and 3 sections of regards for tax and tax sold in January 2010 and December 31, 2016 shall be found as the effective statute codes 2009. Sale taxes, sales taxes, all matters relating to tax dues, including notice and application foreclosure proceedings. Section 9, original section 70, 1802, 1831, 1832, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 1837.01 are repealed. Section 10, following sections outright repealed 7 and 1824.01 reissued by statutes of Nebraska.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 463 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
Voting aye. Senators Albright, Arch, Blood, Bowles, Bostelman, Brandt, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Chambers, Clements, Crawford, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Friesen, Geis, Gregor, Groney, Holler, and Hansen, Hilgers, Hickman, Howard, Hughes, Hunt, Kolowski, Colterman, LaGrone, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, Morfeld, Moser, Merman, Pansy, Brooks, Quick, Shear, Slama, Stinner, Vargas, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting nay, none. Not voting, Senators Brewer and Walls. 47 ayes, no nays, 2 excused, not voting, Mr. President.
LB 463 passes. While the legislature is in session and capable of transacting business, I propose to sign and do hereby sign the following legislative bills. Number 141, 318, 339, 340, 354, 354A, 399, 443, and 463. Items to the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Transportation, chaired by Senator Friesen, reports LB 550 and 641 to general file with amendments. Senator Colterman would like to bring them to LB 34. That's all that I had, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Proceeding on the agenda, general file, 2019 Senator priority bills. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Hunt offers the LB 169. It's a bill for not going to public assistance. It changes provisionally eligibility for supplemental nutrition assistance program benefits. Senator Hunt presented her bill yesterday, Mr. President. At that time, she opened on her bill. Committee amendments were presented by Senator Howard as chair of the Health and Human Services Committee. Senator Groney has an amendment pending to those committee amendments, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senators Hunt, Howard, and Groney, I'll give you each a moment or two to refresh us on where we left off yesterday, then we'll move to the speaking queue. Senator Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor, and good morning, colleagues. Just to refresh you all about LB 169, this bill would change restrictions to SNAP benefits. It advanced unanimously from Health and Human Services, and I've continued to work with members of the committee and members of the body, particularly Senators Arch and Senator Geist. We met this morning to talk about a potential amendment that I'm waiting to get back from bill drafters. Under this amendment, the requirement for participation in a substance abuse therapy program is replaced with participation in parole, probation, or post-release supervision. And we're also discussing harsher or keeping the distributors in there, because I know that was a big issue for a lot of people, and I'm open-minded to what we need to do to move this forward. I just believe that there's a lot of reasons that we need to pass this bill. The ban really creates insurmountable barriers to people with food insecurity, and this can lead not only to additional poverty, but also to reincarceration and additional costs to our justice system. In our debate yesterday, we heard a lot of arguments about that I thought were really great, and in that time I've continued to work with my colleagues on an amendment that I'm waiting to get back from bill drafters. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Howard, would you like a moment to refresh us on the committee amendment?
You know, I'll waive my time. I think Senator Hunt presented it adequately. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Howard. Senator Groney, would you like just a moment before we get to the speaking queue to refresh us?
Yes, my amendment is a filibuster move, and we all know that. It changes persons to individual. I always tell the truth, always. I never defame anybody. I never attack them personally, and I did not yesterday. But of course, slings and arrows from the son of perdition in the body here attacked me, but I'm fine with that. I can live with it. I take it as a compliment. But what bothered me was certain senators cheering him on, clapping. Is that your character? Is that what you believe collegiality is? To cheer on an individual who attacks another senator personally? Look up collegiality. There was an individual senator, a freshman, who actually sat and clapped. I will continue to be collegial. I will continue to stand on moral character. I will never sit coward because I'm worried that a senator won't support my bill and put a nick in what I believe is right and support bad legislation because they might not support my bill. Look at the history, study. Freshman senators, please contact. We have lost the body's knowledge, but some of us have some experience in the back from the last 4 or 5 years on legislation. Contact us before you vote on bad legislation out of committee. Please do that. If you want to be assured that you're voting right, as somebody on the left, ask Groney if he's against it, and then you know you probably should be for it. That's common. But I'm very proud of my manner of speech, my diction, and I never attack another individual if they're from Minnesota and they talk a little different, or from North Omaha and they have a little different dialect than I do. There is no superior, I mispronounced the word. Superior way to communicate in America. I have always known that you win a debate. You have won a debate when your opponent attacks you personally and cannot defend the truth that you have spoken. So remember that when Senator Groney rises, he will never attack you personally. If you believe your beliefs to be true and I disagree, that is not a personal attack. If we have lost the ability to debate on issues and difference of opinion, and you take it personal, you should not be here. You are not mature enough to be here. Thank God, of whatever age, at least 90% of the senators here are mature. Let's keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Groney, you're actually first in speaking queue if you'd like to be recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Now let's get on a debate on the issues. When this came up a few years back, I helped lead a filibuster and we defeated it. And I'm going to remind everybody in this body, this is to defeat this bill is being compassionate. It actually is being compassionate to people who are addicted to drugs. After two arrests, up to the third one, somebody who has possession of drugs, really nobody gets arrested for use of drugs. You have to have it in possession. Nobody gets arrested on the street corner because they're laying prone on the ground, high on a drug. You can walk around high on marijuana on the street corner and you won't get arrested. But if you have some in your pocket, you possess it, you will get arrested. So users don't get arrested, people in possession get arrested. The third strike, we take away food stamps. Why? Why did the people who preceded us do that? Why did the federal government acknowledge it? Because they will sell their $500 food stamp card, SNAP if you want to call it that, for $50 because they live for the moment. The system works. Those folks believe in the food should be at the food pantries. Those folks should be at the soup kitchens. Because nobody wants to steal their bowl of soup or buy their bowl of soup. That's reality. Drug dealers, as I said, they're very despicable individuals. Despicable. They have more victims than anybody else in society as crime. They not only affect the user that they sell to, but they affect their family and their loved ones. They have no concern for anybody but themselves. That's logic, that's common sense. And don't tell me they're the only ones that lose their benefit. Sex offenders lose their benefits to live near a school. Sex offenders lose their benefit of privacy, which supposedly is a constitutional guarantee because they have to register. A banker or insurance agent who embezzles loses his right to ever have a license again in those occupations. That's true. An individual who drinks too much and drives drunken driving and arrested too many times has a lifetime ban on what some of you would consider the right to drive. That is not an argument at all that we pick one individual out for their crime. There is a reason for all of those exceptions. Very good reasons in law. Oh, and do I speak too loud? Do I speak too loud? I'd like to go back in time and talk to Abe Lincoln and Daniel Webster before they had mics. You couldn't even be a politician back there unless you could speak loud. But that's a negative attribute according to the Son of Perdition. A negative attribute. By the way, if you think that's being mean, that's actually a compliment. Look it up. Look at the 44-year history of this individual, and he fits the description. That's not an insult. But if you want to clap and cheer,
1 minute.
it reflects on your character too. This is a bad bill. Senator Hunt is well-meaning, coming in here to the system, understanding that she wants to help people. This doesn't help people. This harms them. This harms them. Harms the victims, harms the drug user, harms the drug dealer. Because you're giving him, you're encouraging him, saying what you've done is understandable. You've destroyed lives. You've killed people. You've avoided paying income taxes with your income. But we think you need to have food stamps. And as I said the other day, drug dealers aren't poor. They don't go into jail poor. They don't come out poor. They got cash. Thank you. Please support AM 804 and vote no on the 710 and 169.
Thanks, Senator Garney. Senator Marfeld, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise in support of the bill, and I'll yield my time to Senator Hunt here in just a minute. But I did want to rise, and I know Speaker Scheer already said a few words, but I wanted to rise to recognize Kitty for all of her service. I was a legislative page just over 10 years ago, sitting right up there, and Kitty was a great person to work with. You knew not to cross her. I always made sure that I was on her good side, and so I got special assignments, everything from tracking down missing pages in the Capitol to guarding the food, pizza and donuts in particular, from senators that were meant for the pages. And I learned a lot from Kitty, and I have a lot of fond memories of her, and I know many legislative pages, some of which are former senators, current senators, will miss her, and the place won't be the same without her. So I really just want to take a minute to say a few good words about Kitty, to recognize her service, and with that, I yield my time to Senator Hunt.
Thank you, Senator Moorfeld. Senator Hunt, 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Moorfeld. Kitty will be very missed by me as well. I just filed an amendment, and I wanted to explain a little bit about what it does with this time. Under this amendment, the requirement for participation in a substance abuse therapy program is replaced with participation in parole, probation, or post-release supervision. That was already in the committee amendment. But what this amendment does is it makes it just for possession or use convictions, not distribution. So distributors are taken out of this in this amendment. This way, the terms for eligibility for food assistance for SNAP would be determined on a case-by-case basis. If a judge believes that a person has a substance abuse problem and should go to treatment for this, then they would make that one of the terms of their parole or probation. Judges almost always make drug testing and substance abuse therapy a requirement. I've spoken to several different criminal defense attorneys, people involved in the justice system, and they have never heard of a case where that wasn't required. In fact, in statute, in all cases in which the offender is guilty of a drug crime, a condition of probation has to be mandatory treatment and counseling. And so it's really giving judges some control. It's keeping the things in the bill that I think from my conversations that we all agree were important. It also brings back from the committee amendment that a person shall be ineligible for supplemental nutrition assistance program if they have had 3 or more felony convictions for possession or use. So that's the amendment, and I'll just continue to have some conversations about it, and I thank everybody for working with me. Senators Arch and Senator Geist this morning, we spent some time talking about this and where we could come to the middle to help what we really all believe is a big problem. People who need food assistance aren't getting it after they come out of our justice system, after they've been incarcerated, formerly incarcerated people. And we all agree that this is a problem and that the way the law is applied isn't really fair and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I want to thank Senators Geist and Arch for talking to me this morning and coming to a place of agreement on this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Matt Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues. Colleagues, I won't belabor the point because it sounds like there is some spirit and compromise, and I appreciate all of the senators that have worked with Senator Hunt on her bill, which I do support. At the end of the day yesterday, we were kind of talking about the options for food that individuals had available, and the kind of couple times the point had been raised that people aren't wanting for food because they have access to a food bank. And I worked for a nonprofit for a while that, while it wasn't a food bank itself, it served as a distribution site for food banks and for other food donation charities of the like. And so we would use our multi-purpose room to help people on our side of town so they didn't have to go all the way across town to the food bank. And the notion that people aren't struggling for food because there is a charity that most of the time has enough food for people who wait in line long enough, it is an issue in our community. It is an issue just hitting that minimum standard of making sure families are healthy and families are well fed. I appreciate the nonprofit community of all organizations and denominations for stepping up, but it is something that affects our community, and I think I didn't fully appreciate it until I was asked to work at those events and help out with those events and see just how consistently every week, how many individuals wanted and needed to wait to have just, bread and potatoes and, broccoli for their family, and would wait in line for a considerable amount of time for that. So I just want that to reflect on all of us when we think about the options available for them. We're depending on the good graces, and so far it seems that's been enough, but will that always be enough, and is that always enough? So with that, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Matt Hansen. Senator Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Hunt, I appreciate you bringing the amendment and everybody else working on it. I still believe, though, that we need to give these people a hand up, not a handout. I don't believe government is the answer for everything, especially food. A hungry person will find work. Somebody who is not hungry, he can take time. It's not important that he goes out and finds work. After getting out of prison or jail, if you're trying to look for that next meal, you might go out and you might get a job to find money for your food. When you get out of jail or prison and you get handed a card that has some amount of money on it, it's not so important now, because now you have one of the basic essentials of life covered. It's not enough to get by for a month, or maybe it is. My son went down to Nashville, Tennessee for an internship this summer, and we told him that he could have $100 a week for food to sustain his life down there. He understood it as $100 a month. So he lived for 3 months on $100 a month in food, and he did very well. It was ramen noodles and tomato soup that he took a spoonful of tomato soup and put with the ramen noodles to make spaghetti every night, and he'd buy one bag of meatballs, and he would cut those meatballs in half, and he'd put 2 meatballs or 4 pieces of meat in his meal every day. And he lived quite well on $100 a month. It was a hand up, not a handout, that we gave our son. He learned an important lesson, that people can survive on very little. So I appreciate the amendment that Senator Hunt is bringing, but I still don't agree with the premise. I believe that our country was made with people who, when they were going through hard times, they found it themselves to go out and find what they needed to do to sustain life and to make their life and their family's life better. So I think that's what we need to concentrate on. Is my son sorry that he had to live on $100 a month? No, it was a great lesson. Matter of fact, he still does quite a bit of that today and hardly spends any money on food. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Lowe. Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Good morning. I sat here yesterday and listened to the discussion and the comments that were made on the floor, and it reminds me of the way society is today. I have in the past received emails from people that say, "Why don't you kill yourself so I don't have to?" And that's the way we have gotten in this society. We do not spend a lot of time talking about the issues. We spend a lot of time attacking each other. I have a very good friend who happens to be a Democrat. He and I seldom have agreed on political things, but we always agree that we're friends. We always are concerned about each other's families. We're friends. We have discussions, we have robust discussions about the issues and what our opinions are, but at the end of the day, we're friends. And that's what I hope would happen here. When we do things like call people names or make fun of how they talk or what their opinion may be because of who they are, That's not part of the discussion. The discussion is about 169. So we need to remember that as we're making the comments on the floor about what that means by not talking about the subject but talking about the individual. A wise person once said, when the debate is lost, slander is a tool of the loser. And I don't want that to happen here. I didn't completely understand what Senator Hunt was saying in her amendment, so if she would answer a question or two, I would appreciate that. Senator Hunt, will you yield to a question?
Senator Hunt, would you yield, please?
Yes.
Senator Hunt, I was trying to listen to what you said about your amendment, but before we get to that, I have another question. So currently, if someone who is a drug dealer and has been charged or is guilty of that, is there a requirement for them to to go into rehabilitation or treatment now?
Yeah, currently they have to have completed a state licensed or nationally accredited substance abuse treatment program.
Even on the first offense?
With one or two, yep.
Okay, so if they've done that once or twice and they do it and they're caught and convicted a third time, it's not working too well, the treatment that they're getting. Would you agree with that?
I wouldn't know why it's not working for them.
So my comment is this: if they've been through treatment once and then again twice, and now this third time we're going to do that all over again, and they repeat it after the first two, chances are pretty good they're going to repeat after the third time. So I'm having a hard time understanding, if we've given them two chances before and they've not changed their lifestyle, I'm wondering if a third chance is going to make a difference at all. But I'll be waiting to see your amendment. It may be something that I can look at and agree with. I hope it comes up soon so I can see that, but I appreciate answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senators Erdman and Hunt. Members, Senator Breezy and Senator Friesen would like to announce some guests today. We have with us 41 fourth graders from Chapel Elementary, St. Liberty Elementary, and 1R Elementary, all from Chapman, St. Liberty, and Grand Island. Those students are with us in the North Balcony. Students, please rise so we can welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. Continuing discussion of the bill, Senator Clements.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition of the bill. I was looking at testimony regarding this bill, and I found that even the Director Wallen of Division of Children and Family Services spoke in opposition. I'd like to quote from some of his testimony. He said, "I'm here to testify in opposition to LB 169, which amends the state statutes regarding supplemental nutrition assistance program for drug felons." He said it would allow individuals with a felony conviction for the distribution or sale of a controlled substance to qualify for SNAP. Under current law, individuals are ineligible if they have received a conviction for distribution or sales, or if they have fewer than 3 convictions for possession and have not completed treatment after conviction. In the last 2 years, DHHS has denied or closed an average of 658 SNAP participants related to drug felonies. Internal data shows that 75% of ineligible members are already part of a household receiving SNAP. While LB 169 would allow more drug felons to qualify for SNAP, many would be added to households currently receiving benefits, thus increasing the monthly allotments already being issued. DHHS supports citizens striving to overcome substance abuse. Furthermore, DHHS believes current statute strikes the right balance of ensuring program integrity while giving those with substance abuse convictions a second chance. However, as a state agency, we have a duty to properly steward the tax dollars earned by the hard work of our neighbors. The department cannot support a bill with the potential consequence of using those dollars to support others who choose to sell and distribute narcotics to the children, families in the communities we serve. One thing I noticed in this bill is that it struck out an important requirement where currently it says a person with 1 or 2 felony convictions shall only be eligible to receive assistance SNAP benefits if he or she is participating in or has completed a state licensed or nationally accredited substance abuse treatment program. And I think it's very important for these individuals to be participating in substance abuse treatment. And the amendment, as I understand that's coming, still does not have that requirement in it. And I think that's extremely important that we do continue to require the participation to try to get them over the substance abuse and end this cycle that they've been in. And so I'm still unable to support this. I appreciate the efforts to remove some of the provisions and objections, but I'm not able to support it at this time. And I would yield my time to Senator Groney if he wants it.
Yes.
Senator Groney, yield, please.
Yes. How much time?
I'm yielding my time to him.
Oh, sorry, 1 minute.
Thank you. As I said, I know a lot of history on this. That's what time in here does. We went 6 hours, I believe, maybe it was 2 years ago, on the very same issue, same bill. And I had brought a bill the next year that said drug testing for life. If you're going to have food stamps for the rest of your life after 3 strikes, you take drug tests at a minimum every 6 months. Because addiction to drugs don't go away. It is always fought. And the fear of the drug test failure actually motivates people to not get back on drugs.
Senator, your time is up, but you're next in the queue. You may continue.
Thank you. If anybody's been noticing, I've been visiting with Senator Hunt. Things happen fast here, and we are looking at changing law, which I don't agree with sometimes, in the blink of an eye on the drop of an amendment, just so everybody can get along. I told Senator Hunt, what I hear in her amendment is good, that the despicable drug dealers still can't get food stamps for life. And then she's worked with Senator Arch to change the probationary period so people with over 3 strikes on maybe get food stamps. But I haven't read it, haven't had time. You know, my diction's so bad that it takes me a while to read things, and my syntax, as this individual had said, I just can't read it instantly. So I've told her we're going to try to take the filibuster here to 3 hours, which is only about another 20-some minutes. And then we'll sit down. If the amendment is amenable to HHS, and I'm going to visit with the people who are in the field, folks, the social workers, the judges, who see this every day, not those just who feel good and then we read it and it sounds good. I'm going to visit with those folks and see what their opinion is. And if they're amenable to it, or they want to tweak it, and Senator Hunt and I can work together. That's what collegiality is. It's not calling people names. I will pull any attempt of a filibuster, and when it comes back, and I will tell the Speaker, and when it comes back to general file, we'll be just fine. But folks, we can't, this is major. This is affecting people's lives. It's not affecting if somebody will vote for our bill and they won't if we vote for theirs. This goes back home to the streets of Omaha and Lincoln and North Platte. This goes back to our judiciary system. It goes back to our state pens. This decision can't be made lightly with an amendment that's been dropped at the last minute. We need to think about it, we need to read it, and we need to bring it back. As I said, and I've talked to the Speaker, and he said he agrees. If we come and say we don't, filibuster's over when we bring it back to general file, and we accept the amendment, that's fine. But as right now, we cannot vote to send it to select file. It can wait. It's a priority bill. It will come back. So I like drug testing. Pure and it's simple, easily available. Something I'd like to look at. Talk to the judges, the probation people, and see how often drug testing is. I think it's pretty common in probation with anybody involved with alcohol or drugs. Well, alcohol's a drug too. But we'll look at it. But folks, I will never, ever cower, hang my head, knowing that I am sitting here because I hope I got a bigger bill coming later, and I want somebody to support it. I think at the end of the day, Senator Hunt and I are going to get along just fine. Like most days, Senator Chambers and I do, but we do poke each other, and we're both bears. Because respect comes with honesty. Respect comes with integrity. Respect comes with honoring your moral code over all things. That is how respect is gathered or garnered, there's my syntax again, in this body. You may like Senator Groney and you may applaud when somebody attacks him, but that's who I am, and I have a loud voice, by the way. This thing needs to sit. It needs to simmer for a day or two. Stew. We need to throw in an amendment or two and see if it'll work. We all want people to improve their lives. We all want people to have a second chance. But giving them a second chance without effort to enable people, Al-Anon, their biggest thing is do not enable. Don't love somebody so much you help them in their addiction. That's what this bill as written does. It helps them in their addiction. It enables them. You're not helping them. So hang in there. Put your name in the queue. Let's get it to 3 hours, and we'll look at things
Time, Senator.
when it's done.
Thank you, Senator Groney. Senator Slama, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to start off by saying that I think Senator Hunt has done a good job in working with folks on both sides of the aisle on this amendment, and I'm still reading through it as well. So I side with Senator Groney in that I'm more than willing to take this up to the 3-hour mark, allow this to simmer for a bit, and have it brought back and be able to vote on this amendment, which from what I've read thus far is a good one. I'm wondering, would Senator Hunt yield to a question?
Senator Hunt, would you please yield?
Mr. President.
Great. Thank you. So on page 3 of the amendment on line 30, you have an addition that is as authorized under 21 U.S.C. 862 AD and within. What does that mean? What does that statute indicate?
That is cleanup language, and that does not change the original statute.
Okay, thank you. That's just a clarification question that I wanted to get cleared up. But like Senator Groney mentioned, I do think I support this amendment. It's a good amendment. But I would like to note why I'm supportive of this bill. In college, I appreciated Senator Lowe's story. Spending $100 a month on food is something that I can relate to because I had to work my way through college and dealt with food insecurity throughout college. So I know what it's like to have a peanut butter sandwich every meal for a week or ramen because it's cheaper and I can't cook. So I understand the problems associated with food insecurity because I've been there and done that, and I'm very sympathetic to that cause. And I'm open to this amendment and this bill. So with that, I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to Senator Groney, if he would take it.
Senator Groney, 240.
Yes, I can ramble, I guess. In my bill in 128, and I dropped on the same issue back in 2017. What we were going to do is a person with one or more felony convictions for the possession or use of a controlled substance, or a person with one or two felony convictions involving the sale or distribution of a controlled substance shall only be eligible to receive supplemental nutritional assistance program if they would be tested every 6 months for the rest of their life, if they were on food stamps. But I was talking to probation a little bit and reading some of their guidelines. Their goal is not to give somebody a fish and let them eat for a day. Their goal on probation is teach them to fish so they can feed themselves. That's what probation is. It's not giving them food. It's not giving them a place to live. It's trying to give them ability to provide it for themselves. So when I was asked the other day, is food a right? Does everybody have a right to food? They don't. Not in a free enterprise system. You have the right to purchase food. You have the right to beg on the corner for food. You have the right to be a good Christian or whatever religion you are. Thank you.
1 minute, Senator.
Oh, you have a right to start a soup kitchen. You have a right to run for office and create a government program with your neighbor's tax dollars, SNAP, to feed others. The good book says you're supposed to leave some fruits out in the harvest so they can glean it. In America, you will get fed if you want to be fed. There's no barriers. Unless you're a small child and your parent is addicted to drugs and they take their EBD card, I think it's called, for $1,000 and supposed to feed those children for a month, and they sell it for $50 so they can have a hit of cocaine.
Time, Senator. Thank you, Senator Slama and Senator Groney. Senator Holleran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, colleagues, Nebraskans, fellow Nebraskans. Senator Groney took my give a man a fish and you feed him for a day line, so I won't repeat that. But it does express a very important point. I have said before, and it's not to make me look like a benevolent individual, but in my previous life careers, both as a farmer and as a previous restaurant career, I hired felons, knew they were felons when I hired them. They had served their time, but I was more than willing to give them a job. Was it a lifetime job? No, it wasn't. There's nothing much glamorous about either farm work or restaurant work, for that matter. It's hard work. But it did allow them to have some level of independence. And I understand Senator Hunt's passion on this, and I appreciate it and I respect it. But we really should be talking more about jobs for parole felons. We spend way too little time doing that. I had coffee with a gentleman this morning. He's in the auto industry, and he says they cannot get technicians. They go to high schools and they talk to counselors, and they let the counselors know that they have openings throughout the state for technicians. But the counselors in the high schools tend to say, well, it's a 2-year program, a technical school, we're not all that interested. We want them to go to four-year liberal arts schools. So I said, well, and this individual said that they did have a nonprofit fund that annually has $300,000 that they would use or direct towards training people up for a skill. So we're talking about people who are in a very dependent situation, who have been incarcerated for some period of time, totally dependent upon the state for room and board. It's not good room and board, but they're dependent upon it. So they get paroled, and we should be looking at how do we keep them, how do we transfer them, how do we get them to a state of being independent with a job. That's what we need to be focused on, not to continue this dependence upon a government program. I am not going to call people out on the microphone or ask them to yield for a question, but for all those who are supporting this program, I would like to have them take a little bit of time on the mic and tell me if they've ever hired a felon in their past. Have you ever hired a felon? I could ask for a show of hands, but I'm not going to create that embarrassing situation. But if you have experience hiring a felon, please take to the microphone and let us understand how you did that, and we can quietly, silently applaud your efforts to get them independent, which is where we need to be focused. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Holleran. Senator Lowe, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. During this time that I wasn't speaking, and now I decided to go back to my local newspaper and look up in the classifieds. And what I found was a page full of, and this is a Wednesday paper, so it's not the big paper for the job interviews or job applications or the ads for jobs are in, but this is just the Wednesday paper. And I didn't look at management skills. I didn't qualify those. I didn't look at over-the-road driver ads because they may have a tough time getting it because of their past. But what I did look at was jobs that a convicted felon could probably be hired at. There were 3 in the agriculture industry. There were at least three in the grocery industry. There was 1 in lawn service, and soon there will be more. There was 1 custodian. There were just 2 in the restaurant industry, but I know there's more. And there was 1 in construction. That's today. There are 11 positions in this one paper that a convicted felon would have a good chance of getting because people are looking for people to hire. You know, 2 years ago, I had a bill that took away some of the qualifications for auto dealership license, for a salesman license, so that convicted felons could sell cars. So I do have sympathy for the felons, but my sympathy is the same that I would give to my sons if they would want free food all the time and they are old enough now to work. I'm glad for them to come over and have dinner with us. But don't move your family in with us. Don't make it my responsibility to feed you all the time, because you are now a grown man and you can work. If you're getting out of jail or prison, you are either a grown man or a grown woman. You need to take some responsibility with your life. It is not these pages' responsibility to feed you. It is not the senators on this floor. It is not the working men and women of our communities to feed you. It's personal responsibility. I do have sympathy, and I will give you a hand up, not a handout. Handouts are for the people who are no longer able to work, or the working mothers that can't quite make it because they have children at home. So let's give these people a hand up, not a handout, and this bill is a handout in my mind. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Lowe. Senator Wayne, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I have tried my hardest to stay out of this debate. I pushed my light a couple times yesterday and turned it back off. But it's just interesting that this body picks and chooses when they want to stand on moral ground, when they want to say certain felons should get or should not get certain things. So Senator Hollering, yes, I do hire felons. Yes, I do background checks. Yes, there are some jobs that they cannot go on, like at Offutt Air Force Base where we're at, but we still submit their names. And if they get denied, they get denied. And I am proud to hire felons. I'll even go a step farther that this year I introduced a bill that's in revenue. So maybe Senator Gurney will get it out of revenue for me. LB 84 that would require or would allow employers to get 60% of wages of a new hire felon who's out of prison or off of paper within 2 years. So we can help them achieve, but my understanding, I don't have the votes to get that out of revenue, but any tax package, I'm pretty sure that comes out of revenue to gain my support will have to have something in there. I find it interesting because in 2017, the year I came here, we passed a bill authored by Senator Groney that allowed felons to have swords and crossbows. But we won't allow them to make sure for a period of time they cannot feed their family. Why is this important? Because most people don't even understand the legal system as it relates to being charged with possession or even charged with intent to deliver. The distributors everybody's so worried about, well, let me tell you who a distributor is under Nebraska law, Senator Groney. Under Nebraska law, a kid at the high school or college level who has a joint and gives it to another kid, that is distribution under Nebraska law. It does not require a sale. It does not require money or goods or anything to be exchanged, but to simply give somebody a legal drug. So yes, that college kid who is passing around a joint can be charged with a felony intent to deliver, distribute. So let's talk about other felonies. We had an interesting hearing yesterday on residue. I bet you people don't know what a residue felony charge is. A residue felony charge is something that's in an ashtray, baggie, or an empty pipe that may contain a substance that a cop believes is meth, weed, or another illegal narcotic. Many times in these cases, they can't even test because it's that small of amount. They can't even test it. But yet people are being charged and convicted of a residue felony over and over. And let me tell you how possession works. There's a long case line of history of what's called constructive possession. Yes, Senator Groney, if you have somebody riding in your car and they have some illegal narcotics on you, everybody in the car is charged, whether you know it or not. And typically what happens, they plead out. And again, you have a felony on your record. You have a possession charge on your record. And again, if you're smoking a joint in a car and you pass it to your friend, you are committing a felony because you are distributing according to Nebraska law. I have a lot more to say, so I'm going to push my button again because we just are being too inconsistent, but I did promise Senator Hunt I would yield the rest of my time to her.
Senator Hunt, 45 seconds.
Thank you, Senator Wayne, for making those great points. Colleagues, I've got 35 votes on this. I've been really kind to Senator Groney in addressing his concerns. I've been really kind in coming to the middle and addressing some concerns of my conservative colleagues. And that's against my nature because I feel very strongly about this bill, but I've worked in good faith with people who had reasonable concerns, and I would like this to get to a vote so the people of Nebraska can see where we think about this compromise amendment that we worked on in good faith.
Time, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wayne and Senator Hunt. Senator Erdman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate Senator Hunt bringing this amendment. I had a chance to read that amendment. I asked her a question off the mic that if people now that are convicted the first time, if they have to take rehab, and she said, yes, it was in the probation statute or regulations. And I appreciate that. But as you think about that a second, if I tell my son, I want you to do a certain thing, and if I'm going to count to 3, and then you're going to get the consequences, and I count to 3 and nothing happens. And the next time that happens, I say, son, you better do what I said, or I'm going to count to 3, and the same result, nothing happens. So the example is they've taken rehab once, and nothing changed. And they take rehab twice, and nothing changed. And they reoffend a third time. What do you think the chances are of them changing the third time if they didn't change the first 2? I have a friend who tells me a story of one time one of his kids' children had fallen on hard times. Financially, they needed help. Came to the family and asked for help. And the mother said, I'll drive you to the homeless shelter. Her lifestyle changed. It's because no one was enabling her anymore. I have several examples where people enabled young people to continue in the lifestyle that they now have, and the result was not good. So once in a while we have to make tough decisions that doesn't look at the time like it's in best interest of the person whom is being affected, but in the end it will be. And Senator Lowe mentioned that he's a compassionate person, and I agree that he is. As much as I know Senator Lowe, I would consider myself in that same category. But I believe we need to give people a hand up and not a handout. Where I live and the people that I represent, the majority don't look to the government for solutions. The majority most often think government can be part of the problem. But the further east we go, it appears that that attitude is not the same, or that opinion is not the same. And as you look at the population shift, as it has happened over time, Lancaster, Douglas, and Sarpy County, it looks as though they've gained 42,000 more residents than they had 10 years ago. Rural Nebraska, which means every county except those 3, have lost about 52,000 residents. 10,000 have probably moved to Arizona, Florida, Kansas, Wyoming, Missouri, somewhere where the taxes are cheaper. But the point is, as we continue to shift the population to the east, we in the west or rural Nebraska become less relevant. And I understand it's one person, one vote. And if you have 70% of the population that lives in 3 counties, good luck for the rest of you. And so I don't understand sometimes why we think that government is always a solution, but that's the way it is. But
1 minute.
Thank you. I haven't seen that this amendment is probably all that it needs to be, and I'm not sure exactly what it needs to be, but I'm not at all in favor of giving people food stamps or SNAP benefits to enable them to continue in the lifestyle that they are now in. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman. Mr. Clerk for items.
Thank Thank you, Mr. President. Amendments to be printed. Senator Hunt to Legislative Bill 169. New A bill. Legislative Bill 483A, introduced by Senator Erdman's bill for an act relating to appropriations, appropriates funds to aid in carrying out the provisions of Legislative Bill 483 and declares an emergency. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Reaching our allotted time on LB 169, we will move now to LB 243. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Legislative Bill 243, introduced by Senator Gregor. It's a bill for an act relating to soil to create the Healthy Soils Task Force to provide powers and duties and require reports. This bill was introduced on January 14th, referred to the Agriculture Committee. That committee placed the bill on general file with committee amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Gregor, you're welcome to open on LB 243.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Legislature. The purpose of LB 243 is to promote more widespread use of healthy soil practices among farm and ranch landowners and operators in Nebraska in order to improve the health, yield, and profitability of the soil, increase its carbon sequestration capacity, and improve water quality. LB 243 was advanced from the Agriculture Committee on a 7-0 vote with committee amendments. No one testified against the bill at the public hearing, and I have designated LB 243 as my priority bill this session. Although I designated 243 as my priority bill, my focus recently has been on the flooding situation in the 40th District, as well as other areas of the state. Godspeed to all Nebraskans. LB 243 proposes to create a Healthy Soils Task Force. As amended by the committee amendments, the task force is to consist of the Director of Department of Agriculture or his designee and the following members appointed by the Governor. 2 representatives from the NRD, 2 academic experts in agriculture and natural resources, 6 representatives from production agriculture, 2 representatives from agribusiness, and 2 representatives from the environmental organization. The chair of the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee shall serve as non-voting members. Of the 6 representatives from the production agriculture, at least 2 are to be using healthy soil practices, and all are to have experience regarding methods of incorporating healthy soil stewardship practices into working agricultural operations and for optimizing environmental services provided through such practices. The Healthy Soils Task Force is to develop a comprehensive healthy soil initiative, as well as develop an action plan to carry out the initiative, using specified standards as measures to improve soil health in developing the action plan. The task force shall examine how to provide farmers with research, education, technical assistance, and demonstration projects. Examine options for financial incentives to improve soil health, and examine the contribution of livestock to soil health. Furthermore, the task force is to identify goals and timelines for improvement of soil health through voluntary partnership among agricultural producers and relevant state and local agencies and other public and private entities. Finally, the task force is to review the new Farm Bill and identify opportunities to leverage funding under the Regional Conservation Partnership Program of the USDA and other conservation programs. The task force shall submit their action plan as well as their findings and recommendations to the Governor and the Agriculture Committee by January 1, 2021. The task force will terminate at that time. The general fund fiscal impact is eliminated with the committee amendments, which will utilize up to $10,000 from the Fertilizer and Soil Conditioners Administrative Fund to defray the cost incurred by the Department of Agriculture relating to the creation of the task force. Having worked with the Natural Resource Conservation Service for over 30 years, I have a deep interest in the soil health and water quality. Healthy soils are fundamental for healthy and sustained food production. I feel that improving the health of Nebraska's soils is the most efficient way for agricultural producers to increase crop and forage productivity and profitability while also protecting the environment. Healthy soils will increase crop resilience to drought, reduce soil erosion, result in high per acre crop yields, increase water retention, thereby reducing downstream flooding, enhance water quality, and increase carbon sequestration of the soils. The USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service has identified 4 soil health principles. 1, disturb soil as little as possible. 2, grow as many species of plants through rotation or a diverse mixture of cover crops. 3, keep living plants growing in the soil as much of the year as possible. And 4, keep the soil surface covered with residue at all times. Many healthy soil practices are widely known, such as deep soil testing, nutrient management, cover crops, no-till, and irrigation water management. The task force will study why there isn't more widespread use of healthy soil practices and will develop methods aimed at increasing their use. The most recent ag census showed that approximately 2% of Nebraska cropland growing a cover crop. No-till was being used about 50% of the cropland. My intent behind this legislation is not, I repeat, not to create new mandates for the agriculture sector, but to make more information available on the advantages of improved soil health to demonstrate the economic and environmental benefits of healthy soil management practices. Currently, the significant cost of chemical inputs to attain the high crop yields is being met with low commodity prices and has created a real hardship for Nebraska farmers. Furthermore, frequency and intensity of extreme weather appears to be increasing, creating greater economic risk and uncertainty. A number of other states have initiated formal soil health programs. Nebraska ranks 4th nationally in the number of acres of farmland and has more irrigated acres than any other state. It is time for Nebraska to get on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Greigert. As the clerk noted, there is a committee amendment from the Agricultural Committee. As Vice Chair of the committee, Senator Brandt, you're welcome to introduce the AM 640.
Thank you, Speaker Scheer. The committee amendment would adjust the membership on the Healthy Soils Task Force created by the underlying bill. It inserts some procedural instruction for getting the task force up and running and modifies tasks assigned to the task force and identifies a cash fund to be utilized to support the work of the task force. Note that LB 640 is a white copy amendment. The amendment strikes the original sections and becomes the bill. I will endeavor to describe what is different in the bill from the introduced version. First, the committee changes the membership on the task force by adding an additional producer for a total of 6, and adds that the 2 members be persons incorporating healthy soil stewardship practices. The amendment also adds 1 additional environmental group representative and guidance that the governor seek to appoint persons with expertise in incorporating soil stewardship practices in working agricultural operations and in understanding of environmental services of soil stewardship. The amendment provides explicitly for the reimbursement of actual and necessary expenses. The amendment provides that the governor complete appointments within 60 days of the effective date of the bill, and that the committee hold an organizational meeting by September 1st and select a chairperson at that time. The emergency clause is added to facilitate this time frame. The task force would meet as necessary at the call of the chairman. As in the original bill, the task force is assigned to the Department of Agriculture for administrative support and provides that the additional support to facilitate the task force may be requested from federal or state agencies. The committee amendment expands upon the original bill by identifying USDA agencies and other public and private organizations the task force may consult to assist it in its work. The amendment assigns 2 new tasks to the task force found in new subsections C and D of Section 3. These include, first, to identify realistic goals and times for improvement of soil health through voluntary partnerships between growers and relevant public and private entities. Secondly, to review provisions of the recently enacted Farm Bill and USDA's implementing regulations to identify opportunities for leveraging state, local, or private funds for purposes of encouraging or enabling soil stewardship practices. Lastly, the amendment authorizes the department to utilize the fertilizers and soil conditioners CAST fund to defray expenses incurred to support the task force. I would move adoption of the committee amendment.
Thanks, Senator Brandt. Mr. Clerk, for motion.
Mr. President, Senator Gregor would move to amend the committee amendments with AM 789.
Senator Gregor, you're welcome to open on AM 789.
Thank you, Mr. President. AM 789 is a technical amendment that does 2 things. First, the committee amendment states that the task force should review the new Farm Bill and identify opportunities to leverage funding, and this information shall be included in the annual report. However, LB 243 only requires 1 report that is due by January 1, 2021. Therefore, the reference to annual report should be stricken. Second, the intent of the committee amendments were to use no more than $10,000 in total from the Fertilizer and Soil Conditioner Administrative Fund, as this would more than cover the expenses projected on the fiscal note until the task force is terminated on January 1, 2021. It is not intended to use $10,000 from the fund each year. Consequently, AM 789 strikes each fiscal year. The total projected expenses for both years range from $4,750 to $6,750 as stated in the fiscal note. I encourage your green vote on AM 789 to Committee Amendments 640. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gregor. Moving to discussion. Those waiting in the queue to speak, Senator McAllister, DeBoer, and Hughes, and others. Senator McAllister, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, colleagues. I was involved with this bill early on, and it's a darn good bill, and I salute Senator Gregor for producing a good bill that we can certainly move forward on. As you look at the bill, you'll see there's wide involvement by the entire agricultural sector. It includes the Department of Agriculture, the NRDs, the academics from, I would guess, East Campus, environmental groups, and 5 production farm persons. So I think there's good representation on this committee, and I think they'll do good work. I think it also helps us find sustainable agriculture. As a city person, I'm certainly not one to talk about that, but I would recognize and contend that sustainable agriculture is the way we need to go. It's going to help the environment with the work that they're going to do. The environment will be helped, which is also a very good thing. And I would hope that it overall will improve the ag economy. And lastly, groundwater quality will be improved. So it's an all-around good bill. I would encourage you to vote for the amendments and support LB 243. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator McAllister. Senator DeBoer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise in support of this bill and its amendments. Because of the family business that my family co-owned as I was growing up, I would be remiss if I did not stand up and speak in favor of this bill. I, in fact, went to an expert and talked to my dad about this type of body and whether there was anything that was currently in place right now, and he told me that there is not currently anything like this that is covering the Nebraska area, and he said that it would be a very good thing to have something like this, in addition to my own decision that way as well. I think it's very important to keep Nebraska's soils producing at their best yields while also looking after our groundwater and keeping our ag economy strong. So I rise in strong support of this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Boer. Senator Hughes, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I have some heartburn with this bill, and Senator Gregor and I have had a discussion about this, so I guess I would like to see if Senator Gregor would yield us some questions so we could talk back through that again.
Senator Gregor, would you please yield?
Definitely.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Gregor. So in the conversations that you and I have had about this bill, my concerns are whether or not it's really needed, whether this is just another task force that makes people feel good that they're doing something. You know, my contention is that as a farmer myself, I'm already doing this. You know, I am the best steward of the soil because that is my livelihood. You know, I'm not out there putting on too much fertilizer because it costs too much. I'm not out there abusing my soil, causing erosion, because that is my livelihood. So I guess I'd like you to kind of address my assertions and, you know, why you think this task force is necessary, please.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. The potential for this task force is the coordination and communication of information already out there. There is a need for better promotion of this education and research data. Research and education are constantly evolving, improving with technology. And, you know, with the precision farming, you say you do a lot of conservation practices already, and as I stated, 50% of the producers are utilizing no-till, but only 2% of the farm ground is covered in cover crops. So it's easy to bring on board when you get new change, and with soil health, the top 25% of the producers. And then the other 25% follow the innovators, the 20. But now, and currently, what I'm really interested in and what this task force, I hope, will zero in on are the other 50% of the producers that may not have that education and or have heard the latest research on some of these conservation practices, such as irrigation, water management, nutrient management, and the use of cover crops itself.
Thank you, Senator Gregor.
Thank you.
I appreciate your enthusiasm on this bill, but the point is, and you said it yourself, this information is available out there. You know, producers have access to this information. So why is creating this task force going to make it any better for those individuals? If the comment, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. If that information is out there and available now, what about this task force is going to make that better, more? What's going to make them read it?
Because this task force will be made up of many subject matter experts in their area. There are the soil scientists, the agronomists, the economists. We're going to have subject matter experts, and not only those types of experts, but experts with being able to promote these conservation practices, which I feel, after standing for 30 years at the Natural Resource Conservation Service and having producers come into me and saying, well, I wish I would have known that. I wish I would have known there was financial incentive payments. I wish I would have known a little more about how to get into cover crops, these types of things. So there's a real need, even though the information is out there, to bring this information to a one-stop shop, if you will, instead of it being scattered throughout and each entity thinking they're doing their good part, which they are, but it's not reaching the individuals it needs to reach at this point.
Okay, thank you, Senator Gregor. Well, the difference between where you're from in the northeast part of the state and the difference where I am from in the southeast part of the state, we have limited rainfall, so cover crops don't really do us that much good out there. You know, we have to conserve every drop of moisture we can, and if you're raising an additional crop as a cover crop, if it's in a wet year, it's great. We've got guys trying it out there, and I'm certainly watching them. But if you get in a dry year and you've planted,
Time, senators.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Speaker.
you, Senator Hughes and Senator Greigert. Senator Hughes would like to welcome 32 seniors from Southwest High School in Bartlett, Nebraska, accompanied by one teacher and two sponsors. Would you please stand and be recognized in the north balcony? Returning to floor discussion, those waiting in the queue, Senator Bowles, Erdman, Holleran, and others. Senator Bowles, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the discussion on healthy soils. Certainly, agriculture is an important industry in this state. I'm not rising to discuss the subject matter, rather the funding stream. And even though this is a pretty small amount, I think it's important that we talk about the process of funding bills as they work through this floor, especially as we have some difficult decisions to make in the Appropriations Committee. So this bill, as introduced, had a small fiscal note. Nonetheless, it had a general fund impact. And so my understanding is that the amendment from the Agriculture Committee, instead of using general funds, would propose using a cash fund. And if Senator Greigert would yield to a question, I'd like to ask a few questions about that cash fund.
Senator Greigert, would you please yield?
Okay, I believe...
Senator Greigert, will you yield to a question?
Oh, certainly.
Very good. Okay, so can you please describe the cash fund which you are utilizing for this purpose?
Yeah, this cash fund is coming from the new created fertilizer and a fund that is already there.
Okay, and can you tell me what the allowable purposes of that fund are?
What the $10,000 would be allowed for is for the...
No, I'm sorry, Senator Greigert. The fund from which you are transferring these dollars, what are the allowable purposes from that cash fund?
Just for the task force to come together to basically pay, their mileage and that stuff for the meetings they may
Let me
hold.
try to ask that question one more time, Senator Greigert. You're transferring dollars from one fund to a new purpose for your task force, and that's okay. I'm not questioning the purposes of the task force. What I'm asking you is the dollars were accumulated in a cash fund for a purpose that is established by the legislature. Are those purposes in line with your bill? What are the purposes that the funds in the cash fund may be used for?
Okay, thank you. Yes, they are. This task force is in line with the fertilizer and soil conditioner administrative fund. And, really, we won't even be taken away from the actual principle of this fund. The interest it makes will more than cover the $10,000.
Okay, and the soil conditioner cash fund, what are the purposes for which that cash fund are to be used?
They currently receive revenue from inspection fees paid. Okay, they're used used to defray the department expenses in administering the Nebraska Fertilizer and Soil Conditioner Act. So.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think the questions that we need to ask when we're talking about defraying general fund expenditures with cash funds are, is the transfer an appropriate use of those dollars? And is the cash fund sound and sufficient and have enough dollars in it such that a transfer will be okay without undermining the original uses and purposes of the fund? And it sounds as though you've done your homework, Senator Greigert, and that's an appropriate use of the fund and that the fund is financially sustainable. But I do think as we move bills through this body, it's important for us to slow down and take a beat and make sure that if there's a general fund expenditure, we understand what that means. We understand what that means in contrast to the other priorities in the Appropriations Committee, paying for the utilities of the university, keeping up with provider rates, paying the homestead exemption, all of those things.
1 minute.
And that if we are transferring money from a cash fund, it's an appropriate purpose and those cash funds are sustainable. So with that dialogue, you've answered my questions, put my mind at ease regarding this financial impact. I appreciate the work on the bill, and certainly if the folks who represent agriculture interests in this body think this is important, I do as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bowles and Senator Gregert. Senator Erdman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning again. Senator Gregor and I had a conversation a couple of nights ago about this bill, and as he stated that night, he said it's an educational bill to bring to the forefront to people's minds what it is to have healthy soil. I appreciate that. Senator Gregor, would you yield to a question?
Senator Gregert, would you please yield?
Yes, please.
Senator, following up on Senator Bowles' line of questioning, how is the money put in the agricultural fertilizer fund that you're going to take this cash out of? How's that money get in there?
That is a fund that I understand is already there. It's just being renamed to this fund.
But the funds have to be renewed in that agency or that account. So do people pay fertilizer tax on their fertilizer? How does that fund get replenished?
I'm getting some help in there. I appreciate it. But the money gets put there by inspection fees and facility registration fees and license fee.
Okay. So it's not what you would call taxes, but it is someone's fee for regulating that industry. Would that be a fair assumption?
Yes, for fertilizer and soil conditioners administrative fund.
Okay. So how much is it? Did Senator Bowles ask you how much is in there? Do you know how much is in that fund?
There's $275,000 in that fund.
Okay. And is that fund fully appropriated to where is there room for you to take $10,000 out to do this?
Yes, there is. And like I said earlier, the money's okay. The ending balance in that fund, I'm being corrected here, is $483,352.
Oh, very good.
So once again, we won't be even using any of the principal of this fund. It'll just be the interest on this fund.
Very good. Thank you. You've answered my questions. One of the things that I seen in the committee statement that I thought was peculiar is the people that came in and support the interfaith group that's against, that is for global warming, the Catholic Conference, and several others. It's kind of peculiar that they would have an interest in this bill. That's what it is. You can't distinguish who comes in to testify. I understand that. I want to bring to your attention something that's not exactly about this bill, but it is very relevant today. Senator Gregert made mention in his opening comments about the flooding and the disaster and the problems we have. I introduced a bill earlier this year in front of the Revenue Committee. The number is 482. LB 482 is a bill that has been called the Destruction of Property Bill. What that bill would do is if you have a destruction of your property anytime during the year up till October 1, it would be available to you that your property tax would be prorated to the date of destruction and then would begin when the property is reconstructed and is back into your use. So in light of what's happened in the last couple of weeks with the disaster of the flooding and the blizzards and the property that's been lost, if 482 would be in place, those residents who lost their homes and those businesses that lost their buildings, their property tax would stop on the day of destruction, and it would pick up again.
1 minute.
Thank you. It would pick up again once it's been reconstructed. And we hear from the people who receive the taxes how that would be a negative for them, but we seldom talk about the people who pay the taxes. And consequently, that's what this bill would do. It would alleviate those taxes next year in 2020 because we pay taxes in arrears. And some have said, well, how would the county, the city, and all those people who collect tax dollars recover if you take away some of their valuation? Well, the question you have to answer is, who stands a chance of getting FEMA help, NEMA help, more than cities or counties? And answer the question, how much FEMA and NEMA help are the homeowners going to get? The answer is slim and none. So consequently, this bill would give us an opportunity to actually make government be part of the solution for a change. And I've talked to some of the people in the Revenue Committee, and I hope that bill gets out, because it's a common sense bill that would make a lot of sense to a lot of people who've been affected by the floods and disasters that have happened.
That's time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Urban. Senators Friesen, Quick, and Halloran like to welcome some guests today. We have 30 members of Leadership Tomorrow and Leadership Hastings Grand Island group with us up in the South Balcony. If those citizens could please rise, I'd like to welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. Continuing discussion on the bill. Senator Halloran.
Thank you, Mr. President. My apologies to the members of the legislature and especially to Senator Gregert for misjudging my time. I was across the rotunda visiting with the leadership group. We just applauded. And so that was an error on my part, but it does show the importance of having a very competent vice chair. And Senator Brandt, thank you for jumping in on that. As a chair of the Agriculture Committee, I'm a proponent of Senator Greger's effort. There is a preponderance of information out there on cover crops and soil health, but this is a coordinating effort to have that information better communicated than it has been, and to be able to have, in effect, a clearinghouse of information on a very important issue dealing with healthy soils. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Halloran. Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Gregert, would you yield to a question?
Senator Gregert, yield, please.
Definitely.
I noticed in the bill where the Department of Agriculture, the head of the Department of Agriculture or his designee could be part of this task force, but yet the chairman of the Natural Resource Committee, the chairman of the Agriculture Committee did not have that option. Would that be something that you would be willing to look at between general and select if we would write an amendment to allow chairman of Natural Resource and chairman of Ag or their designees be part of this task force?
Definitely. I would go along with that wholeheartedly.
Okay, thank you very much. You know, as an ag producer, and I said I had heartburn with this bill. You know, I think it's just redundancy. The information is out there, and you know the issues of cover crops. You know that's the latest and greatest issue that agriculture is looking at now, and it does show in certain areas where it does definitely improve your soil health. It improves the tilth, it improves infiltration, improves the organic matter, all of those things that anybody who is in agriculture understands. But, one size does not fit all in Nebraska. They talk about the difference in environment and climate conditions east to west, or west to east, excuse me, from Scottsbluff to Falls City is as great as it is from Omaha to the East Coast. The difference in elevation makes a huge difference. The difference in rainfall makes all the difference in the world. But back to my original point, this information in this bill is available now. It's out there, it's in the farm magazines. Anybody who is still involved in agriculture is on top of this because the margins are so extremely thin that you better be or you're going to go out of business. And creating another bureaucracy or task force. To me, it is just justifying the existence of university professors and NRCS personnel and everybody else we put on there to have another meeting. And I'm sorry, Senator Gregor, if that offends you, but any of us who've been engaged in agriculture and gone to those meetings to make sure that we are as profitable as possible, because that's what we do in agriculture. We're in it to make money. That's our job. We're in it to feed the world. And that's getting more and more difficult all the time, and taking advantage of all the tools that we have available to us, technology, whether it's GPS guidance or the latest university techniques. That's what we have to do. We're already doing that, and creating this task force as another layer of making people feel good and they're justifying their jobs is absolutely unnecessary. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Hughes. Senator Clements.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm also wondering about this bill and the need for it. Would Senator Gregor yield to a question?
Senator Gregor, yield, please.
Most definitely.
Just the basic question is, what problem is this solving?
This problem is solving the actual coordination and communication of the information that's out there that is not getting to the individuals at this point that need the information.
All right, thank you. Well, one other question, or maybe a comment. I was looking at the University of Nebraska Extension website, and they have lots of farm management reports, and they have a network of offices around the state, but I don't see them. They didn't testify. I don't see them as one of the board members would. Is there a reason why you're not using some of their services?
This is what this task force is going to do, and this is what I envision and I hope that this task force will do, is bring the NRD, the NRCS, the university, the many producers that, like in my opening, that are using these conservation practices to be able to use demonstration plots on their piece of ground to I've attended a number of meetings, and you can use your smartphone and call up all this information. But I want to tell you, back in my district, not all the producers are running around with smartphones to see where information they could get. They collect and they take in more information by showing them, demonstrating. And I would like to see demonstration plots on individuals that are using conservation practices. And let's don't just get caught up in cover crops. There's a number of conservation practices that, like I've mentioned in the two most important ones, being deep soil testing and nutrient management to get started with. Cover crops are just one of many conservation practices that producers, if they have heard about them, they don't fully understand them. And what this task force will be able to do is use the university in a way to promote these conservation practices more than just hearing about them, but getting down into the weeds on them, if you will.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that you do intend to use some of the university resources, because they do have experts. One other question I had, there were many proponents who are not directly in agriculture, but I noticed that Farm Bureau did not testify. Have you talked to Farm Bureau? They're a statewide farm organization.
Yeah, I've talked to Farm Bureau. I want to tell you something. The potential for this bill, and the people that have the greatest to get the greatest thing out of this bill, is the ones that are actually pushing back. And I understand why the pushback is because a lot of producers don't want government in their business, and that's fine. I totally respect that. But this bill is not about mandates. It's not about regulating. It's not about anything other than to bring this information together to help individuals that don't have the smartphone or would like to gather this information in a different way, help them to realize and be able to experience all these conservation practices and incentive monies out there to be able to help them to experiment with these conservation practices at this time.
Well, thank you. So you don't see this as a study in order to bring in some kind of legislation to mandate to farmers what they have to do?
Not at all. I worked with the Natural Resource Conservation Service for 30 years, and yes, it was on the federal level. And I want to tell you, when the feds come in, you're probably looking at some mandates. But if we work to be proactive at water quality especially, it's a passion of mine, water quality. But I shouldn't have to mandate, and I'm not going to mandate and or regulate anyone in this bill and or any other bill that I may support. Because I feel we can get a lot more accomplished by working together on this. If I told you you had bad water, would I have to mandate that for you to do something, to want to educate yourself and then do something about it, to clean it up for yourself?
No, I don't think so.
I just don't see it.
I appreciate your comments. Those were just questions that I hadn't seen addressed and was curious about that.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Clement. Senator Gregert. Before proceeding, Senator Wishart would like to announce some guests today. We have with us Tammy and Tom Hansen of Lincoln and Bettina Heaton of Roca, Nebraska. They're all with us on the north balcony. If those guests could please rise, I'd like to welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. Continuing discussion, Senator Dorn.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, body. I stand today in support of this bill. Different areas of the state have different needs. They have different qualities of soil. As Senator Hughes spoke out in his area, something that may work in eastern Nebraska may not work out in western Nebraska because of variation in rainfall and a lot of other things. On our farm, we do use cover crops. It's amazing how, particularly when we have winters like this, springs like this, when we have the moisture we have, the value that we do get out of a cover crop and the soil savings that we do have. Some of these things what Senator Gregert just talked about, we need to be proactive. We need to do things so that we don't have the federal government coming in and mandating things. One of those things we can do is to set up a group like this and look at different ways that we maybe can implement. We can work at other things to improve our soil health. We want to leave our soil for the next generation and the generation after that in better condition that we have. Most farmers have that philosophy. And if we can do something like this to help with that process, I'm for this one, I'm for this bill, and we will be supporting it.
Thanks, Senator Dorn. Senator Brandt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of this bill and all the amendments, and I would like to thank Senator Gregert for bringing this. I serve on the Ag Committee, and as such, we had 20 testifiers in support, 0 opponents, and 2 neutral testifiers. This bill enjoyed a very positive response in committee hearings. Several points I'd like to make. With the recent flooding, this type of work is more important than ever. This bill is about preserving one of our state's most important assets, topsoil. $10,000 is a very small price to pay for what we will receive in return. And with that, I would yield the rest of my time to Senator Gregert if he would use it.
Thanks, Senator Brandt. Senator Gregert, 4 minutes, 15.
Thank you. Yeah, just wanting to clarify some of the questions that are being brought out, and we're getting keyed in on cover crops, and that's not the intent of this bill at all. Cover crops are one of the ways to increase soil health. You know, I take everything that I do, and especially new change, and what I've worked with in the military and my natural resource career. But new change, I take it on a crawl, walk, run issue, so we don't get ahead of ourselves. And you know, soil health isn't a new concept. Soil health started back in 1985 with the Farm Bill and with the Sod Buster and Swamp Buster provisions. So this concept of soil health is way beyond the crawl walk. We should be running at this time. And this what this task force will be looking at is why more widespread use of certain conservation practices aren't being utilized to their full potential. I understand, and there are many farmers, ranchers out there using different kinds of conservation practices. But those practices through the years, and I commend the use of all these farmers with the use of these practices. But those farmers were using conservation practices like no-till more in the context of saving the soil, not building the soil, or with the primary purpose of building the soil health. So along with no-till, and also another question, or I'm hearing, is that we don't need this. Well, we do need. This isn't redundancy. If there's 50% of the people, farmers, producers out there that haven't heard about the different types of conservation practices. And I'm fully aware that this task force is not going to come up with a cookie sheet recipe for follow this and you're going to have the healthiest soils in the state. Each individual, after they get this information and are able to utilize this information, will still have to come up with their own individual management plan. So, yeah, I'm not looking at. I don't have any aspirations of this task force coming up with a. If you do this on your land, you'll be good to go. Each individual has different soil types, different parts of the state, from 16 inches of rain annually to our part of the state up in Knox County will get 26 inches of rain annually. So I'm fully aware of that, and I'm not actually the one going to be on the task force. I would more than happily be on the task force, and thank you, Mr. President. But I do have some knowledge to bring to the task force, and if so be it, I'd gladly serve on this task force. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Greggert. Senator Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am not a farmer. I do own farm ground, but I am not a farmer. But I do know soil health is very important to growing our crops and to keeping our soil where it belongs and not down a river somewhere. So I appreciate what Senator Greggert is doing, but I'm just not sure if we need another agency looking at things. I think we need some collaboration across the state, so I appreciate it. For that, I'd like to yield the rest of my time to Senator Hughes if he would like it.
Thanks, Senator Lowe. Senator Hughes, 4 minutes 15.
Thank you, Senator Lowe. I appreciate it. So would Senator Dorn take some questions?
Senator Dorn, would you take some questions, please?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Thank you, Senator Dorn. So when you spoke a moment ago, you talked about you are implementing these practices on your farm of cover crops and no-till, to reduce erosion. Is that correct?
Yes, we are.
How long have you been doing that?
Oh, we've been no-tilling probably approximately 40 years. We started doing cover crops really in the last 5 to 8 years. We try to do approximately half our acres in cover crop, except for this last year when it rained too much, we couldn't get them in.
So how did you know to do that? Where did you get that information?
Visiting with other people, our county extension agent, the no-till part, our county extension agent was the one that really, in southeast Nebraska, him and another extension agent really started promoting that years ago before everybody wanted to do it. They were at one time considered people that you didn't want to visit with about it because you knew they were going to promote it. Now I think in our county, I know more than 75% is no-tilled, but it might be higher than that. And through the years, I think most farmers have definitely seen the reason why to do it.
Thank you. So the way that this type of technology spreads through the country, would you agree with this statement that it is probably more by neighbor watching neighbor? You have those fellow farmers who are innovators that try things, and if it works for them, then the neighbors start experimenting with it as well, and eventually it does cover a majority of the acres. Is that it? Would you agree with that statement?
That is definitely one of the ways. I don't know if that's the only way. There are a lot of other ways, but that is definitely one of the ways that it does happen, is neighbor watching another neighbor, and if it's successful for them, then you start asking questions and see if that works on your farm.
Okay, thank you, Senator Dorn. I appreciate that information very much. This is back to my original point that we're creating another task force that is redundant. The amount of information that we have access to in agriculture is phenomenal if you will just listen to it. And the majority of farmers today are listening to it, or otherwise they are out of business. You know, there's no question about it. It does make you more money. In our operation, you know, we generally sit down with our employees the first half an hour every morning, and we spend probably the first 15 minutes talking about technology. Not only guidance, but what, you know, one of us read in a farm magazine, and what, you know, the Joneses are doing down the road, you know, to the south, and what the Andersons are doing to the road to the north, watching, you know, the crops that they're planting, the techniques that they're using. But just made a short list of the information sources that are available if you want them. You know, when it comes to soil erosion, the NRDs, our natural resource districts, are working very hard to control soil erosion and also improve our water quality. You know, in the areas of the state where we have nitrates, you know, they are the ones doing the testing now. They are the ones helping the farmers. You know, if you're in a high nitrate area, you are limited on how much nitrogen you can put on your field, and you're limited on when you can put nitrogen on your field. There are things already in place to mitigate these factors. You know, the soil erosion part of it, no-till has been a huge advantage. You know, we've been doing that on our farm for probably 20 years, and it makes a huge difference in our profitability and our productivity.
That's time, Senator.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks,
Chairman.
Senator Hughes. Senator Bosselman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. I want to take a few minutes this morning before we get to the end of the day and talk a little bit about flood relief in my district, in my area, things that are happening. And I want to get some information out there because I'm starting to receive emails or phone calls. Our emergency managers are getting phone calls and that, just for general information that people need right now. There's a lot of relief out there for individuals to tap into. In Saunders County, obviously in all three counties, your emergency manager is your first contact. Get a hold of them, ask them for assistance. Otherwise, go online, and there's a lot of resources. I've been looking right here, just clicking on flood relief in your county, and it'll pull up the locations. But I want to talk about three right now specifically. If you're in Saunders County, and you're in the southern part of Saunders County around Ashland, if you go to the Riverview Community Church, 32nd Boyd Street, that's a location that is receiving items for victims, individuals who are in the floodplains that's been affected by the flood. They have a lot of items there. They're receiving donations. If you have something you'd like to give, please bring it to the church there, and they will distribute it out. I'm not for sure on their hours, so I would call them. I think Michelle Sight is the contact person. If you could contact Michelle, they'll help you out there if you're in Saunders County. If you're in northern part of Saunders County, North Bend High School is a place that you can contact. At North Bend, they're collecting materials. They're also organizing help. So they're organizing people to come out and help you clean up at your property where you're at. So that is a good location for you to contact for materials and or physical, people to come out and help you clean up. Another location in Butler County will be the Butler County Event Center at the fairgrounds. My wife's up there helping as well. That facility, they have a lot of material there. Non-perishable foods, water, clothing, baby items. They're looking, all of these locations are looking for shovels, brooms, mops. If you need cleaning supplies, there's buckets there that are pre-made of cleaning supplies to come into your home if you're flooded, to clean those areas up. They're also taking donations, monetary donations, I think, at those locations as well, that you can eventually will be able to have opportunities to request those funds. Another place I would suggest people contact, I'm sorry, at the David City, I know they're open from 8 to 8 today, 8 to 8 tomorrow, I think, and Saturday, and then Sunday it's 10 to 6. So please take advantage of these locations that are in your areas, in your communities. It doesn't matter if you live in that county or not. If you have a need, go seek these places out because they want to help. People are bringing in materials there for you to use. Please come and take advantage of that. If you're a veteran and you're an American Legion member, there's some financial opportunities there to receive some funding there through a program they have. There will be an application through your county veteran service officer in which to apply. That will be something that will be coming up, as well as my understanding the Sons of American Legion and others are forming groups of individuals who will come out and help you do cleanup. So those are important things right now, that these are organizations and locations that if you need help, if you need some help getting cleaned up, if you need materials to clean up, if you need to talk to somebody, those are areas right now I would suggest you get a hold of and you go to. I know they all have a lot of material there. Donations, really, shovels and those type of things is what they need.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you're in Schuyler, there is just a huge effort that's going on in Schuyler right now on cleanup and taking care of the people. Really, you just need to contact the individuals there in Schuyler. They've been providing hot meals and those type of things for people. The first responders, emergency managers, all those involved, the volunteers just helping everybody. It's just a great outpouring of assistance to people. You just need to go and ask. That opportunity, those people are there to help you. And I would just encourage you all to go reach out in those areas and get that assistance, get that help that would help you out to get things cleaned up and move on through your day and get your property, your home, whatever it might be, cleaned up and livable again. If you have those needs, please go to those 3 areas. Again, that's Riverside Community Church in Ashland, the North Bend High School, and the Butler County at the fairgrounds. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Bossman. Senator Pansy Brooks announces guest visiting today. Karen Bell Dancy, the Executive Director of the YWCA, is with us under the North Balcony. Ms. Dancy, please rise so we can welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. Continuing discussion, Senator Hughes, it's your third opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I guess I want to kind of finish on and wrap up here on the thread that I was going about. I sat and made just a very quick list of all the resources that are available for this information. We talked about the NRD and the thing that they do on water testing and soil erosion. The University of Nebraska and the Extension Service does a very good job. We've got demonstration farms located throughout the state where they put on field days and show this latest technology. The NRCS that Senator Gregert has worked for 30 years, they're a very good resource. There's also financial aid available to plant cover crops and do those types of things. Probably more importantly is private industry. These are the people that are on the ground that are wanting to make sure that farmers are successful because we are their customers. And those are the seed corn companies, the fertilizer companies, and the chemical companies. Those are the individuals that are most interested in getting this information out to us, that we can take advantage of the latest, seed variety that will boost our yields, or the fertilizer that is more efficient, that we have to put less on as we go through the field, and the tremendous strides that have been made in the chemical industry of the targeting of specific weeds and not harming the plants that we're trying to make a living at. So I'm pretty good at reading the tea leaves from the back of this body, and I can understand pretty good idea how the vote's going to go. But I just wanted to make sure that I had opportunity to express my heartburn with this bill of creating a task force that really is not necessary. If it does pass, I have visited with Senator Gregert to have an amendment that would allow a designee for the chairman of Natural Resources and Agriculture. If they fill that spot, they could do it themselves, or they could appoint someone from their committee. So with that, thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Hughes. Senator Groney.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in support of LB 243. I myself have been in this line of agriculture my entire life, from managing plants to sales of specialized equipment in the no-till industry. I know all the chemicals, and I've seen the history, and I've seen the growth, the conservation tillage. But sometimes it moves too slow. I'll give you an example. We had strip till. Then I was deeply involved with its innovation, and it spread. But it took a drought, a very bad drought in the West, to push it forward. And either you, even with irrigation, either you raised nothing, or you raised a crop when you combined no-till conservation tillage with tillage. Those types of technologies need to move faster across the state. And I can see Senator Gregert's effort here to combine all that information, take out the biases of the chemical companies and certain NRDs for programs, because programs can vary so much between districts. It's a good way to congregate information. Now with modern technology, they could recommend creating a website where flood control. There's a lot of farmers going to wake up with all this damage and say, maybe I need to change my ways. I lost a lot of topsoil with the erosion. How do I get the river bottom back into shape with the tons of sand on top of it? Quick information, coordinated, doesn't hurt anything. As far as adding Senator Hughes' ideal, which is fine, but my experience on the Education Committee, every single time we add a representative from the legislature or from the governor's office onto a commission or a committee, we get a letter from the speaker who says, watch out, you are a conflict of powers because you're mixing executive and legislative and the people together on a commission. So if you do that, you can do it in certain ways with non-voting members. But I would make sure you write it right and talk to the speaker before you do it. But I stand in full support of LB 243. The timing's good with the erosion and flood control and what we're going to have on prime river bottom land to recondition it. So thank you, and I applaud Senator Gregert for bringing LB 243.
Thanks, Senator Groney. Senator Gregert, you're recognized to close on AM 789.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill has the potential to be a triple winner. A winner for the producer, a winner for the consumer, and a winner for the environment. What farmers have done in the past to protect natural resources is commendable. While they have been using agronomic practices that are better for the soil for decades, but more in the context of soil loss, both wind and water erosion, rather than how to make the soil healthy. Through my years of flying a helicopter, I have learned never be afraid to ask for help and never be afraid to offer help. This bill will do nothing more than organize, coordinate, and communicate valuable information that will help individuals in many different ways. I encourage you to vote green on the amendments and LB 243. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Greggert. Members, you heard the discussion on AM 789. The question for the body is the adoption of the amendment. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care too? Record, please.
39 ayes, no nays on the adoption of the amendment to the committee amendments.
AM 789 is adopted. Senator Halloran, recognized to close on committee amendment.
I would just encourage the body to adopt AM 624 and to adopt LB 243. It's a good bill. It's a timely bill. With the floods we've experienced, we need to be looking more closely at this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Halloran. Question for the body is the adoption of the AM 640 Agriculture Committee amendment. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Thirty-eight ayes, no nays on the adoption of committee amendments.
Committee amendments are adopted. Any further discussion on it? LB 243 as amended. I see none. Senator Greggert, you recognize to close on the advance of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I already did my close, so I have nothing further to say, but hope you take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Greggert. Question for the body is the advance of LB 243 to unit our initial. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
39 ayes, 1 nay on the advancement of the bill.
LB 243 advances. Speaker Scheer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to refresh everyone's memory, there is a briefing at 15:25 at noon. If we get down there a little earlier, I'm sure we can get started a little earlier. Just for those that are listening, the briefing is for senators and staff and press. So again, senator, staff, and press briefing 15:25. The floods. The floods, I imagine General Bohawk and Director Tuma will both be there again. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Items to the record, please.
Mr. President, committee reports. The Committee on Transportation reports Legislative Bill 138 and 356, both to general file with committee amendments attached. New resolution, LR 55 by Senator Colderman, recognizes Tim Tiggerstrom for his years of service to the Polk County Rural Public Power District. Amendment to be printed to LB 169 from Senator Hunt. The bills that were read on final reading this morning have been presented to the governor at 11:30 a.m. Communication from the governor, engrossed legislative bills 8, 16, 29, 48, 112, 112A, 116, 124, 125, 127, 139, 145, 156, 160, 195, 224, 284, 302, 319, 384, 486, 575, 660, 660A, and 699 were received in the governor's office on March 15th and delivered as signed to the Secretary of State on March 21st. Announcement that the Government Committee will be holding an executive session this afternoon following the adjournment of the committee hearing in room 1507. Series of name adds, Senator Gregert, Breezy, Brent, and Lowe to LB 15, Senator Williams to 352, and Senator Slama to 584. And finally, Mr. President, priority motion, Senator Merman would move to adjourn until Monday, March 25th, 2019 at 9 o'clock a.m.
Members, you heard the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. We are adjourned.